Welcome to Devils in the Details. I am Annie DeGraw. Today we are talking about media literacy, misinformation and disinformation. And joining us to talk to us about that today, we have Kristy Roschke, the Managing Director of News Code Lab at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, and Nadya Bliss, Executive Director of the Global Security Initiative at ASU. Nadya, Kristy, thank you for joining us. Kicking it off, first question, Kristy. What is media disinformation and misinformation? What's the difference?
So my definition really comes to intent. Misinformation is not factual information that is maybe shared by mistake. Disinformation is going to be not factual information that's shared with an intention to harm or to deceive.
And Nadya, we've seen a lot of this in the news lately. What is driving the spread? Is it social media?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting, right? I mean, propaganda and all kinds of false information is absolutely not a new phenomenon, but this really, really easy access to technology allows the information to spread so fast.
And I would say that I have two parents in their 70s who both think they are accomplished authors because they have Facebook accounts. And I think that is probably true across the board. For the greater part of history, we had journalists who are our gatekeepers of all information. That has changed. How do people make sure that they are a responsible member of the internet community? And this is for you, Kristy.
Sure, I think it's a really good point. I think essentially we can all be gatekeepers in some way or another, even if our sphere of influence is 5 people. I think part of the challenge is to make sure people understand that they do still have that influence over that 5 people, 10 people, 500 people, and that because on digital networks, that information can spread even beyond their social networks. So I think a part of it is just making sure that your parents and other people do understand that the information that they share on social media does have influence on others. And so they want to make sure that they're sharing the best possible information.
Absolutely. And it's not just your network. It's actually an issue of national security. Nadya, can you talk to me? How is this an issue of national security? We've seen a lot of talk about this in the news, particularly over the last year and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. It is quite concerning. So first of all, I'd like to say that a lot of the times people think that the goal of mis and disinformation is to make you think a certain way. But in reality, one of the things that's really scary is that the spread of disinformation creates an environment where you do not know what to think. And that essentially dismantles trust in institutions. So trusted institutions like, for example, intelligence community and Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention become no longer trusted. And that becomes very difficult, essentially, for the national security community to be able to track the messaging that is happening online and be able to mitigate any potential for violence. So that's, of course, the other thing that is definitely a national security, a global security, and a homeland security concern is that this messaging can actually incite physical violence. And that is quite worrisome.
It's when what is on our screen jumps off and comes into the real world. It's a very, very real threat. That leads me perfectly to my next question for you, Kristy. Understanding the difference between what objective journalism is and what an opinion piece is, how can readers and viewers understand what they're consuming?
Sure. Well, I mean, news organizations have gotten a lot better about labeling content. There's still a lot of work to do in that regard, but certainly on your social feeds, everything kind of looks the same, right? So all outlets sort of look the same. If something has the intent to persuade or the intent to inform or the intent to make you question everything, it all kind of looks the same. So credible news organizations have started labeling that content to really help people better understand what it is they're consuming. So that can be one way to help. But certainly, it's a challenge. And then helping people to understand sort of what outlets are credible and not credible, which ones produce have a process of ethical reporting of news, for instance. That's part of what I do in teaching media literacy, is understanding that there are outlets that deserve our trust, and then there are outlets that don't, and we should be very skeptical of them.
And you bring up a good point. We have seen a lot more flagging of information, particularly on social media. Nadya, is there a way that social media algorithms are actually playing a role in the spread of this misinformation, disinformation?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because technology, as with anything, there's a positive and a negative side, right? So some of the very positive things is, especially some of the disinformation that we've seen around election, it's really easy to catch it. The dates are wrong, the video is doctored, so it's really, really easy to catch it, automatically detect it, and mark it. But on the flip side of it, what happens essentially is you have these algorithms that are driven by demand. So the more someone clicks on something, the more a group of people clicks on something, the more likely it's going to continue to spread. So, you think you're seeing an article because your Aunt Phyllis is connected to you, but really it's because a ton of servers, these computers in the back rooms, have computed which algorithms are getting the most clicks. And that creates a difficult environment for the individual.
I think this is what the plot of many 1980s movies where the computers literally took over, but I think it's true. And I think, Kristy, this is my last question for you. We have seen this conversation about media literacy really rise to the forefront in a way it never has before. What is the biggest change you've seen in the conversation over the last year?
Well, I think that, I'm optimistic that having a actual concerted effort to teach media literacy and digital literacies in schools at all ages, and even for people who are beyond school, that we need to really have an understanding of everything from what the algorithms are and how they work and sort of that digital piece of it, but also just what is in our media environments and how we consume it, what voices are present, what voices aren't, how we influence media, how media influence us. These are things we do every day. And so, we've never thought we needed to teach them before. But also we used to live in a world where we had 3 choices for news, and now we have 3 choices every second. So, we need to catch up on the education side so that we're actively understanding kind of more about our, just how we use media in our daily lives. So I think education is a really important piece of it. And now that it is a little bit more in the forefront, I'm hopeful that we can enact some policy and some change so that we can start doing this more explicitly, again, at all levels of education.
Speaking of that policy, Nadya, last question for you. What policy does need to happen to perhaps better regulate this issue in the future?
So I will qualify this. I am not a policy expert. I'm a computer scientist, but I do think there is a couple of specific roles federal government can play. I think one, robust investment in mis and disinformation research that is interdisciplinary and not just research, but actually transition into practice. Just as I mentioned earlier, I think one of the things that we see is these automated tools that can pick up things and concert with a human can really go a long way as part of either a system or an education process. The other thing that I think is incredibly important is that our policymakers actually have the same kind of, and maybe more in depth, media literacy as the general public, because it is very difficult to write laws about the social media ecosystem without having that technical depth. So that training and engagement, I think, is really important.
And that is a good plug if you are interested. We do have classes on this topic at ASU. That is all the time we have today. Kristy, Nadya, I want to thank you for joining us to talk about this important topic. Until next time on Devils in the Details, stay safe, be healthy.